Welcome back to my channel. I am Stephanie Rublitz, and if you've never been here before, I am on a one-year mission to completely revamp my wardrobe. Most of it doesn't fit me properly or is just plain ugly, and so I am going to spend the next year refashioning garments that I already have to fit me, and I'm also going to be making new garments, and hopefully by the end of the year, yeah, I'll feel good in my clothes. That's the goal, that's the dream, people, and that's what I'm gonna do. Today we're working on a refashion of a shirt. I've had this shirt in my closet for like, I'm gonna say a decade. Yeah, like close to 10 years. Now, that's weird for me because I'm a purger. I like get rid of stuff, but there are just a few garments that I have been hanging onto because I know that I can refashion them. And this is one of them. This is the only t-shirt that I've held onto for that long. And there's a reason. It has Marilyn on it. I'm not even big on graphic tees, but I mean, it was just baby Marilyn. Like, she was barely done being Norma Jean Baker when this photo was taken. And so I have this, but there's a weird thing about this shirt. The image is on the back. And yeah, I know there's t-shirts that like, you put images on the back, but I mean, this is a front and center image. Like, this is not to be on your back. Like, she should be, I don't know. So we're gonna put a new neckline on, we're gonna put new sleeves on, and we're gonna do that with some gray jersey knit. So it will be, oh, what do you have on your face, Marilyn? So it will be super comfy to wear, and it's another opportunity for me to have a long sleeve shirt that actually fits me. Super stoked about that. So let's get to it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my stitch ripper to pick out all the seams holding that old neckline on. I'm not going to be able to reuse it because I'm going to make the neck opening bigger, but I'll be able to save it for another project. Next, I'm going to trim the back of the neckline to match what is currently the front. That way I can turn the shirt around and it's not going to like choke me when I'm trying to wear it. But after I did that, I realized, you know, I kind of like the neck to be a bit more scoopy. So I drew out what I thought was going to be a pleasing scoop neck shape, and I'm just cutting out the first half, and once I get that all cut out, then I'm going to fold that piece over to the other side, and I'll use that as my guide for cutting out the second half, and then it'll be more symmetrical than if I just like eyeballed the whole thing. Now, as you can see, the back side is now sticking out and kind of funny looking, so we're going to trim that as well, but I do want that to rest a little bit higher than the front of the neckline if I can. I'm a little bit limited by the old neckline that's there, so I'm going to do the best I can to leave a little bit more height there than what is on the new front of the shirt. Now it is time to get rid of the old arms. I have my quilting ruler and I'm just lining up from my neckline to the bottom of the sleeve, a Reglan style, but then I realized that I actually should have moved my ruler over just a little bit in the underarm because there was still a little bit of the underarm seam left behind. No worries though, I'm just going to trim that out, and then I'm going to account for that same length on the other one, and I just marked that out, and I'm using that as the line to cut to on my other side. So now both are cut, no turning back. I'm cutting the seam out of the bottom of one of the sleeves because I'm going to use this as my pattern for the top of my new sleeve. I'm going to mark the front and the back so that I remember which is which, because the neckline is a little bit different in the front and the back. And I'm also just marking a seam allowance note for myself to remind myself that I cut the seam allowance, the old seam allowance off, and that I'll need to add a little bit extra on that, on the seam where I sew up the side of the sleeve. And then I also just wrote on my measurement for the sleeve so that I can give myself a long sleeve. I pinned that fabric down, and then I'm marking out the extra seam allowance that I need to give where I cut that old seam out. And then I lost the rest of my footage for that step because my memory card filled up and I didn't realize. So here's what happened. I don't need any seam allowance on the neck, but I do need seam allowance down the sides And I need that little bit of extra seam allowance where I cut that seam out. Then I measure my length so that I can set the length of my sleeve, and I make sure that both sides are the same length so that when I sew that sleeve up, it'll be fine. Now I turn the shirt inside out, and I'm going to attach my sleeves by putting them in the garment with right sides of fabric facing each other, and then I'm going to pin starting at the neckline and taking it all the way to the underarm of the shirt. So I'm stitching the arms on with a straight overlocking stitch. And then I do the same exact stitch to sew the bottom seam of the sleeves together. Once that's done, I top stitch the seams just where the old shirt and the sleeves attach. And then I go ahead and hem my sleeves. I was going to take more off, but then I realized that I could wear this off the shoulder, so I left my sleeves as long and baggy as I could. Now I'm going to cut the new collar. So I've folded my fabric over twice so that my ruler is longer than it, and I've cut myself a nice straight line once I've squared up my fabric, and then I cut a strip 1.5 inches wide. And I've cut that so that the stretch is running down the strip, so it's actually quite a stretchy bit of fabric. And I'm just folding that in half and giving it a really solid pressing. Now I'm folding the back panel of my shirt in half and marking it with a pin. And I'm just starting my, we'll call it bias tape. It's not real bias tape, but we'll call it that. I'm starting my bias tape just a little bit beyond the halfway mark. And when I'm applying it, I'm actually stretching it just a little bit. If you're stretching it so much that you're getting any puckering or gathering, then it's too much. But if you don't stretch it at all, you could potentially get a neckline that stands up on you and looks kind of funky. So you want to stretch it just a little bit. Now that little bit in the center back, I'm not going to sew that part yet. So I'm gonna sew the whole neckline, leaving about 1 inch in the center back. And I'm stitching that with the same overlocking straight stitch that I stitched the sleeves up with. Now here's that back section, and I'm just measuring out the exact length that I need, plus 1/4 inch for seam allowance. Now I've opened up both sides of the bias tape, placing right sides together. I'm going to stitch those together now. Then I'm going to refold that tape and then apply it raw edges together the same as I did the rest of the bias tape. And then I'm going to stitch that on. After pressing the neckline down, then I'm going to top stitch that as well. Well, here's Marilyn. She's ready to wear, and I'm super excited. One thing that I love about how this refashion turned out is that I was able to refashion a 100% cotton t-shirt and not just do it with like scissors and tying knots, which, not throwing shade at all to that method of refashioning t-shirts. There are some super cute styles out there. I just find I'm left with less shirt when I do that. And as a plus size woman, it's not ideal. This way I ended up with more shirt. I got sleeves out of it, which I'm just thrilled about. And 100% cotton t-shirts were definitely like my uniform in junior high and high school because that's what was around. And I lived in a rodeo town. So it was jeans, 100% cotton t-shirt, and bangs that were like so big that they looked like I molded them over a pool needle or something. they were terrible. yeah, it was bad. But here's the thing. Even though stretch t-shirts, in my view, are way more comfortable, they're way more available in the places that I do end up shopping, and I do enjoy wearing them more, 100% cotton t-shirts, whether you like them or not, probably find a way to worm their way into your wardrobe. Because if you are supporting a local school, or you're on a sports team, or maybe you work at a local pub, or maybe your husband is in a punk band, often printed t-shirts are a great way for small groups to monetize or to raise money or do whatever they need to do. And so they're always going to wind up in my wardrobe. So I might as well have a way of refashioning them that I really like. I'm loving the scoop neck, I'm loving the over the shoulder, I'm loving the long sleeves, and I'm probably going to continue to do this with the cotton t-shirts that wind up in my wardrobe. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Next week we'll be working on something new, so for now make sure that you hit like, subscribe, hit the dingy bell, do all the things, and we will see you next week.